Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Herrera. Good morning, everybody. Please have your seat. Take a seat. Thank you. Do a brief introduction for you, and then we'll get started on the slides. Where do you want me? Right here. Sit there, sir. Perfect. And then I'll put your stuff up here for you if you want to use the podium during the briefing. So Mr. Herrera is a member of the Senior Executive Service. He's an Associate Deputy Assistant Secretary for Financial Operations, Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force Financial Management and Comptroller, Headquarters U.S. Air Force, Washington, D.C. Mr. Herrera assists the Deputy Assistant Secretary on all issues involving the amended Chief Financial Officers Act of 1990 and related financial management reforms. He is responsible for ensuring the timely and accurate submission of the Air Force financial statements and managing, at the executive level, the Air Force Financial Improvement Plan and progress toward achieving an unqualified audit opinion. A native of San Antonio, Texas, Mr. Herrera began his career at the Air Force as a PALS Acquire intern upon graduation from the University of Texas at San Antonio. He's held progressively more responsible positions in the area of budget formulation and execution, program integration, and resource management. His experience spans several appropriations and functional areas. Previous positions include Director for Budget Programs, Office of the Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Air Force, Financial Management, and Comptroller, Headquarters U.S. Air Force, Washington, D.C. Without further ado, Mr. Herrera. Welcome, sir.
All right, so let's have a conversation. We'll keep this light, a nice, friendly conversation. And how many are, who's who? Who's here for BFMOC? And then FMSOC? Okay. So the FMSOC people said, you guys get to the back of the room. I see how it goes. So I've actually been in Air Force financial management since 1988. Came in as a PALS Acquire in January of 1988. I would have never guessed, and we have some, I see, foreign students as well here. So welcome, thank you for attending our class. In January of '88, I started working for the Air Force. I would have never, ever guessed that, what is that, 26, 27 years later, I would still be working for the Air Force. It was just kind of that first job I got coming out of college, and I graduated from UT in San Antonio. I had a degree in finance, had some accounting background, not a heavy accounting background. I think I had like 15 hours of accounting. So it's primarily a budget guy. Did budget stuff the entire time. I was working in the engine room up at Air Staff, working in SAF FMP, where we do the President's budget rollout, and we share a space with the POM shop, and we do both the POM rollout and the PB rollout, work all the messaging for the SAF FM, for the Chief of Budget, for AA, and help with a lot of the messaging that the Secretary and the Undersecretary and the Chief and the Vice Chief have to do. The preparation that things like this did for me to get ready for that job, and all the different jobs I had along the way, were perfect. I landed in the engine room, had never worked on the Air Staff, but had done R&D budgeting, procurement budgeting, O&M budgeting, had worked at FMSOC for many years as an analyst and as a junior level supervisor, up to where I ultimately was the deputy comptroller at FMSOC at one time. Worked at a product center when there was multiple product centers, so I did acquisition, R&D, procurement at Eglin. We made bombs. We gotten really good at making bombs and being able to precisely drop bombs on target. So when I got to the Air Staff and started working in the engine room, thought, okay, this might be a challenge. But it was interesting, because all the things that you do now and that you'll continue to do throughout your career are going to prepare you for that job. I mean, I was ready. I was ready. I was, basically we had just rolled out at that time the FY14 President's budget. I got those budget. We were on the receiving end of all the congressional inquiries related to that budget submission, all the media inquiries related to that budget submission. And all of them would funnel through us if they were on the budget side, or or if they were on the appropriation side, if it was legislative. If it's on the authorization side, then it comes through another channel. But ultimately, we got eyes on it. We either were responsible for drafting the response or coordinating on the response. But remarkably, all the training you receive, all the experience you receive, you know the right answer when you see it. You know the wrong answer when you see it. You know how the Air Force messages. You're going to read what your bosses have said, how you've responded to taskings, how when your local media, your local newspaper hits you with a question that says, why did your wing commander stop this program that's so important to this local community? And you read your wing commander's response and how well thought it is, and that basically he was trying to balance resources and making the most of the limited funding he has. All of a sudden, you're equipped to answer those questions yourself. You don't realize you're constantly in training to do that, but you are. So I wanted to make sure you all knew that. This is an important class you're in. The fact that you're doing this class, both BFMOC and FMSOC, I did both of them. I did the BFMOC, or what we call Budget Officer School in 1988. And then I shortened FMSOC. It was a Guard and Reserve version of FMSOC. I don't know if they still have that. It's a 2-week version. Did that in '89. And I have friends from my Budget Officer School that I made in 1988 that we still talk to each other. And we will reference to, if someone applies for a job, and I know, hey, that guy worked at Hurlburt. Jeff DeCoker's at Hurlburt. Jeff DeCoker and I went to, he's the FMA at outside. I'll give Jeff a call and say, hey, Jeff, what do you think about so-and-so? Jeff has called me and said, hey, I see so-and-so was on the air staff with you. What do you think about so-and-so? They're looking for a job here. Tough problem. Something that hey, this relates to how things work at the log center. And so-and-so that I went to Budget Officer School worked at a log center. Maybe they can help me with this working capital fund question because I'm an O&M guy and I don't get it. So you're going to make really good relationships in this class, really good contacts. Your instructors Captain Wright here, or especially your really young people are looking at him like, oh, he's really a smart guy and he knows a lot and he's been around a long time. After a few years, you and Captain Wright are going to be real close to working in the trenches on the same project together. So it flies by. I used to have black hair like you. I mean, it used to be completely black. Now it's kind of salt and pepper. It's remarkable how quickly it flies by. And so I would say a couple things. And this is not the presentation I'm giving. This is just a few things I wanted to talk to you all about. This is an important opportunity that you have. Take advantage of it. Learn as much as you can out of it. The exercises that you're going through are practical and they're worthwhile, and there's a reason you're doing them. I will tell you, I've had great success in budget because I could write, because I got basic algebra, because I got basic statistics, and I played well with others. If you want to know the secret to how do I become an SES someday, write well, know your math, know your business, know your organization and the mission, and play well with others. And work hard. Clearly work hard. That's important. Own it. If you're given an assignment, if you're given a task, own your desk job. Whatever you're in charge of, be the freaking best at it. And so those, practice. If you're not an extrovert, if you're kind of an introverted person, you're kind of in a little, what do you call it? We're a fishbowl. You're sort of in a fishbowl right now. You can basically practice getting out of your comfort zone in these little group projects and team projects, working with other people, talking to other people, building relationships, so that when you go back to your base, other things that served me well, when I was in Air Mobility Command, I was there when it was called MAC, Military Airlift Command, and I was at AFSOC. I got up and I said, okay, well, I'm working this depot issue with the Loggies, and now they're A4 types, and I would go look for the guy I was supposed to work on the project with and say, hey, can I sit at your desk and we talk about this? And I'd build that relationship. And whether it was the senior master sergeant or the captain or this GS 11 or 12 civilian, I had a relationship with that person. And when the issues came up, they knew to reach to me and I knew to reach to them, and we worked really well together. So those are just some guiding principles I want to give to you guys, because they're still serving me. Those very basics are still serving me very well. Think before you shoot and press send. Reread that message. Make sure your message is on point. Make sure your message is consistent with what your boss and what your boss's boss is saying. And you're going to do extremely well. So 27 years later, almost 27 years later, I love the Air Force. This is my Air Force. And I approach it that way. I approach my job that way. They probably tell you about work-life balance. Maybe you guys talk about that a little bit early on in the course. I don't know if you do, but work-life balance. Don't let your job own you. Have something that's charging you spiritually. Have something that's charging you emotionally. Have a close family relationship. I'm with you on all that, but I own my job, and it's always back there a little bit. Even when I'm out, at the ballpark with the kids or whatever, I'm problem solving back here on how I'm going to deal with whatever issue is the big issue at the office. And but do give your family, when you're with them, undivided attention. Kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth there, but bottom line is own your job, guys, and you'll do really, really well. And I think that the Air Force is the United States Air Force is a great organization. I think we take care of our people. I think we care very much for our people. And I think our mission is a worthwhile mission and meaningful, and there's goodness in it. So, not many people on their day-to-day job get to say, that's where I'm going to work, and that's what I'm going to go do. So keep that in mind and make the best of it. Enjoy yourself. Let's see. By the way, on those writing, stats, algebra, Excel, get good at Excel. There's some smart people in Excel that do things called pivot tables, and I look and I think, yeah, glad they didn't have pivot tables when I was anyhow, if you're a leader, and you're all leaders, whether you realize it or not, young GS9, GS11, you're setting an example for somebody behind you, GS7. Someone's looking at you, and you're someone who's of a lower grade than you. NCOs, senior NCOs, captains, take care of your people. Own that you are responsible for them. Own that you're constantly being looked at as an example for them. And be that good, positive role model for them. Then finally, let's see what else. Value, along the lines of what I just said, value your reputation. You're only as good as your reputation. How do you want, as I said to you, captains, someday you're going to be looking at hiring a civilian, and you're going to call out to Captain Wright and say, hey, do you remember so-and-so, he worked on your staff. So you're only as good as your reputation, and I guarantee you these two are probably going to make that phone call someday. So how do you want to be spoken of when you're being looked at for future positions? Those phone calls do happen, No matter who you refer to on your resume as your reference, people will look at your resume and they're going to say, I want to talk to someone where he used to work that I might know. So keep that in mind. All right, next slide. So these are the things I'm really here to talk to you about. I'm going to talk to you about audit readiness, budget update, cost challenges. First thing is FIRE. Go FIRE, financial improvement and audit readiness. As an old budget guy, I never ever thought I would be doing FinOps and audit readiness. Honestly, I did not. I applied for the job and I got it, and I thought, holy cow, I'm an SES now. That's really neat, but boy, I really need to do some brushing up on audit readiness. And I've been on the fire hose receiving end of audit readiness. And if you guys are really irritated at somebody who's sending you another test script for how you're doing DTS and segregation of duties and how you're doing you're managing your 2875 access forms and whether or not you're doing your 577s and how you're reviewing your civilian pay reconciliations. Those people work for me, and so I'm the guy responsible for all that work coming your way. So if you want to throw something, I'm ready. You can throw it now, but it's a lot of work we've been putting on you, and I realize that. I'm going to go, next slide. I'll take you through a little bit of the history. So in 1990, the Congress created this Chief Financial Officers Act, and it was modified in 94 to say that we are going to start requiring annual auditable financial statements from the different agencies, federal agencies. In 1996, there was a requirement for agencies to implement compliant financial systems. And what I mean by compliant financial systems is general ledger, USSGL, basically double entry accounting, accrual accounting systems. There was some refined guidance. We clearly didn't get that message in 1994 because in 2002 Congress said, knock it off, DODIG. Stop auditing the services. They're not even close to being audit ready. Clearly they haven't made much progress from 94 to 02. Stop auditing them until they assert that they indeed are ready to undergo audits. In 2005, Congress made us develop this FIRE plan, Financial Improvement and Audit Readiness, and so think of it as constant financial improvement plan. When you hear the word FIP a lot, what that means is that we're always looking to refine and improve our processes. In FY10, Congress put the legislated the date that said, I think for fiscal year 18, we would start auditing our financial statements. So that meant by 30 September 17, we're ready. Secretary Panetta then said, oh, well, that's great, but for our statement of budgetary resources, which is one of our financial statements, we're going to be ready even sooner. We're going to be ready for that by 30 September 14. So Congress said, good idea, and then they put it into NDAA. They turned it into law. His promise to deliver that was turned into law. So be careful what you promise to deliver. It might get turned into law. And then recently Congress said, our expectation is when we go to full financial statement audit, that you will produce a financial statement no later than March 31st, 2019. Well, actually, you will audit your FY18 financial statement and have an audit report no later than March of 2019. So, a little history on it. Next chart. Why is it important? We know that. We know it's the law. We know we've been told to do that. We know it's a better way of, it basically demonstrates that we are tracking how we allocate resources, how we spend our dollars. We need to increase the public's trust. Think of us as general electorate and our taxpayers as shareholders of general electorate. It's no different than that. We owe the taxpayer an auditable financial statement. And so we'll go to the next chart there. There's the Air Force strategy. How many of you, have you got you? That's Sergeant. You worked how many years? 16. Have you ever even looked at the Air Force financial statements? Probably not. Yeah, I got to the Pentagon, and when I went to my job, and I'm thinking, okay, I guess I should go find the financial statements. We actually have them. There's a financial statement. It actually has a balance sheet in there. It has a statement of budgetary resources. It has a statement of net costs. And so if you think of it, and it looks nothing like what you might think it would look like. It's not here's the status, fund status of your O&M appropriation and your fund status of your procurement. It's all resources that we're receiving. It basically is your budget authority, it's your obligations, it's your expenditures. It is how much of that authority you had at the beginning of the year was obligated expense, how much is still available and rolling forward into the next fiscal year. Balance sheet in here is basically every facility that is on an Air Force installation, the square footage of that facility is captured into the balance sheet. It's hopefully appropriately valued. Same for munitions, same for airplanes, same for general equipment. So just no different than a company. We have been feeding our financial statement. So what you're doing at base level, ultimately feeds your financial statement. I think we collectively, all DoD, Air Force, did probably a very poor job helping you guys in the field, helping fire resonate with you. Early on you would hear, fire's important, make sure you're doing good firework. And well, what does that mean? Sure, I'll do my job. But so if you think about it, what's going to happen in 2014, at the end of this fiscal year, we're going to get an auditor, an IPA firm, an independent public accountant, and they're going to come and they're going to review just one component of our financial statements, the scheduled statement of budgetary resources, and they're going to take that and make it even a smaller component. We're going to take a baby step and we're going to say schedule of budgetary activity. We're going to say all FY15 data is going to be ready to undergo an audit. We're not going to look at the balance sheet. We're not going to look at our notes. We're not going to look at our change in net cost. All we're looking at is our resources received, how much we obligate, how much we expense. Not looking at beginning balances. Beginning balances, if you will, is 2-year, 3-year appropriations rolling forward, unexpended, unobligated appropriations that are 1-year appropriations rolling forward. So all that comes off the table because it's turned out to be such a hard endeavor. We're just going to try to narrow the focus and see if we can demonstrate that we can undergo an audit. But if you think about it, all FY15 appropriations, whatever the color of money, obligations, they all feed an obligation line, they all feed an expenditure line. An IPA firm would like to, and DoDIG would like to say, okay, I can tie out those obligations all the way back to the individual transaction that generated those obligations. So I can go back to Captain Wright's travel voucher, and CDY is a part of our population of obligations. I'm going to take that travel voucher, and I'm going to take a sample of a bunch of travel vouchers, and I'm going to make sure that he uploaded the receipts that were required to be uploaded. What's the threshold? You're in class. What's the threshold for uploading receipts? $75. Okay. So if anything over $75, did he upload the receipt? Did he turn it in time? Did he sign it? Did his boss sign it? Or whoever the approving official? Did the approving official actually fill out a 577 that said he was an approving official and it was authorized to sign it? If he needed to get into gaps for any reason and needed to do a 2875 or even for DTS, I don't know that we have to do 2875 for DTS. I don't think so. But for gaps we do. Did they fill that form right? And if you can say, okay, if there's a reconciliation of travel payments made that are done, did that reconciliation get accomplished, and did whoever the finance check that does that reconciliation, did he sign and date it? Did if he saw any annotations that needed to be reconciled, did he put an explanation on that reconciliation as to why there was an error and that you validated what that error was and corrected it? So if that IPA can go check, 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 and he can do that with the sample of 50 travel vouchers, then we're golden. We're good, and they go on to vendor pay small contracts. And did we do all our Form 9s right? And did we dot all the I's and cross all the T's? The minute they say, nope, didn't do this, didn't do this, didn't do this, didn't do this, then that IPA basically has no confidence in the population sample. And they will say, okay, I can't rely on your systems, so I'm going to have to expand that level of that sample size to get more confidence that what you're sorting to, that your financials are accurate, is in fact true. So, if that helps you understand better why we're making you do all these tests that we do and these metrics, that's why. Because we have to be able to demonstrate to an IPA and to DoDIG that in fact we're following our internal controls, we're following our policies, we're following our procedures, we're following our guidance memos that we've been pushing out to you. So hopefully that helps you appreciate that, the drill a little bit. But you know, I'll show you that financial statement currently as written. Our financial statement says, from the Air Force, the Air Force did not completely comply with Federal Financial Management Improvement Act. Many Air Force financial management systems do not comply with Federal Financial Management System requirements. The design of legacy Air Force financial management and feeder systems does not allow them to collect and record financial transactions based on full accrual accounting basis, provide the necessary system access controls, or complies with U.S. SGL, Standard General Ledger. The Air Force does not have a system that records individual transactions using the Standard General Ledger, U.S. Standard General Ledger. We do say DEAMS is the Air Force Financial Management Enterprise Resource Planning System that uses industry-proven Oracle software to provide warfighters with timely, accurate information, and that's going to make us General Ledger compliant. We acknowledge that, but we're not there yet. In our financial statements, our statement says the Air Force is unable to implement fully all elements of U.S. GAAP and OMB Circular 136. Based on that, we get from DODIG a disclaimer of opinion. The DODIG says, Air Force Management asserted to us that the Air Force General Fund for fiscal year 13 and 12 basic financial statements would not substantially conform to U.S. GAAP. That Air Force Financial Management and feeder systems were unable to adequately support material amounts on the basic statements as of September 30, 2013. Because of the significance of the matters described in the basis for disclaimer and opinion paragraph, we could not obtain sufficient evidence to provide a basis for an audit opinion. So currently we get a disclaimer opinion. Now, if you had stock in GE and you had a significant number of shares in General Electric, how would you feel about that?
Not very confident.
Kind of irritated, actually. Probably might want to take your money and invest it elsewhere. So, don't you think we owe it to our taxpayer to do a better job and to have a better process? I would say, again, being the guy that has been in the trenches, that we do a lot of things right. So we need to bring our DEAMS system up to snuff, our accounting system, and I'll talk about that shortly. We need to keep working on demonstrating that we're complying with rules and regulations and policies, that for DTS we're segregating duties appropriately, so that someone who has someone can't go and be the approving official for their own orders. The simple example. But right now we're working with the DTMO to put system changes in there so that that's not a manual exercise for you, but rather an automated exercise. It's bogus that you have to do it that way. We need to work on our automation to help you get there. I'm convinced, I've been a sick pay analyst. I took great pride. When I was a pay analyst, and for all of you out there, if you're in budget, make yourself become a sick pay analyst somewhere along the way. I promise you'll be glad you did. You'll understand a huge percentage of the O&M budget, and you'll have that as an edge up on people who've never done it. But when I was a sick pay analyst at FMSOC, I knew where I could look at my UMD. I knew where every employee was that should have been receiving funding from AFSOC for their sick pay. I would look at my 1092. I could track my work year costs. I knew I was distributing money appropriately. So we're real close. I worked CLS contracts, contractor logistics support contracts for some of our trainers. I had copies. When I would send a MIPR to an ALC and say, "Here's a MIPR for this CLS contract for this training device," I made sure I went in a year. I had copies of the contracts that were let, and I could demonstrate. Here's the obligation. It's $20 million. Here's my contract, $20 million. Here's my fund site, and I worked with the guys in accounting and finance and with DFAS to make sure at all track we were all on the same page. I would work my ODL and make sure that as the obligations were expensing, that it was tracking in the ODL. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I never claimed to be. I know all of you do things like that. I know all of you are all over your obligations. So I really have confidence that we're probably a lot closer to being audit ready than some of the assessments say we are. And I think that's why the Air Force feels like, let's just go to audit. Let's do this. Let's do this. They're going to give us the punch list. They're going to tell us this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. You should do a better job here. And it'll help validate the work we've been doing. We've had a contractor who's sort of been helping us get audit ready. So we need help validating that indeed we are making progress. And the things that we have identified as needing more work, in fact, are the right things. And maybe they're going to point out these are some other things you need to be doing. But I think fundamentally, all of you and the people you work with care about the money you receive. You want to make sure you're spending it right. You want to make sure you're loading it right. You want to make sure you're complying with fiscal law. So I don't think personally that we're that far away, but it's going to take some heavy lifting to finish dotting all those I's, crossing all those T's, and then it's going to take an audit compliant system, which is DEEMS. So you probably will ask me, why are we going to audit if we don't have our DEEMS system fully automated yet? We actually are working some workarounds so that we can capture that universe of transactions that feeds our accounting system and our financial statements so that we can demonstrate to DODIG and to an ITA, an independent public accountant, that we do know where all the transactions occur, and we can help them identify those source originating obligating events. Next slide. Near-term goals, we want to go to the SBA audit in June 14. We've asserted to OSD Comptroller that we're ready, that we do have some shortfalls, that we're continuing to work on completing some of our processes in terms of process fixes. Journal vouchers at the most highest level, the Air Force does these things called journal vouchers that say the United States Postal Service says Air Force owes us $1 million. We say we only owe you USPS $500K. Postal Service has a clean audit opinion. So guess who wins on that argument? They do. So we have to plug. Even though we know $500,000 and we can show them the document. Look, here's what we have to demonstrate. They have a clean audit opinion. If they disagree, they win. And we have to plug our number, and we have to substantiate why we're putting a plug into our accounts payable that says it's now $500,000 more. But if we substantiate it, then it's a good journal voucher. The problem is sometimes we've done journal vouchers that aren't substantiated at the top level or aren't adequately substantiated. So we're working on that. We're reducing, where we can, we're eliminating journal vouchers as much as possible. But where we do make them, we're trying to substantiate them so that they're well documented, and an IPA would say, yep, I understand why you make it. Sometimes it's just a reverse entry that you have to make. That it's just an accounting adjustment that is a normal business process. Existence and completeness, that's that balance sheet work I talked about. Tracking munitions, making sure they're properly valued, inventory, equipment, real property. Corrective actions, those are the sort of things we talked about. Completeness of financial transactions through reconciliation of feeder systems. That is a process we're working on. DFAS is actually building a tool. It's called the SBRR tool. And that's going to help us capture that prior to us having DEEMS fully deployed. We need to robust our audit infrastructure. I don't know how many of you were affected by the Civ Pay and the funds receipt distribution audit. Were any of you affected by that? Yep. So really, it didn't touch everybody, but it did go across the Air Force, where we were audited on that. But that was a manual process. So we get these things called PBCs provided by client. The IPA says, I want to see this, long list of records. When we go to audit, that's going to become a huge exercise because they're going to be asking for all kinds of source documents. We'll need to be able to reach out to you. We're going to need to have a repository, a data repository process that can receive and categorize and manage that all of that data so that we can quickly get to it and work with it. So we're working on that. And our challenges is our legacy environment. We've said that many times. I've said to you several times, our current system gaps that was fielded in 1968 is not compliant. And then we need to increase the depth of our audit expertise. The funds receipt distribution audit that just occurred and the Civ Pay audit that was an Air Force-wide audit, but only one of you raised your hand for being impacted by that. So clearly, you know, you are going to have to really, fortunately, this collaborative testing we've been doing that some of you, most of you, or many of you have been impacted by, it's kind of a cutting your teeth and improving your skills on how to respond to audits, but nothing's going to give you that practical experience like actually the Air Force undergoing audit. So, next slide. I won't stay on this one long, but I just wanted you to understand. So this is the scheduled budgetary resources. We took the Air Force processes and we broke it into our larger financial business processes. Net outlays is our expenditures that we work with on DFAS, reimbursement process, mill strips and supply requisitions, fuel requisitions, mill pay, sieve pay, funds distribution. You know, kind of the bread and butter big components of budget and finance and accounting activity. If we were doing this right, if we had more time, not that we're doing it wrong, but we had actually an 8-month contract protest that we went pencils down. So our contract protest, we didn't have the benefit of our contractors supporting our audit readiness efforts. I do not have a very big audit staff on their staff. So I have roughly 100 contractors, 100 plus contractors supporting our audit readiness efforts. So when we went 8 months without that, we really could not make as much progress as we needed to make. So it'd be really nice to have that 8 months back, but I don't have it back. But what this means is that the purple there is basically, if we had more time, what we would do is say with funds distribution and sieve pay, we asserted that we were ready to OSD Comptroller. We asserted that we were ready to be audited. OSD Comptroller looked at our documentation. They said, got it. We believe you. We agree. We looked at all of your assertion work products. You're good. Then we hired an IPA firm, independent public accountant. They came in, scrubbed our books, reviewed our processes, and they did an audit. So that's the blue is an IPA examination. And then after that, we either make some corrections or we sustain the opinion that we received. What's happening here is we're finishing our assertion work, and we don't have time to go into a validation by an IPA prior to the SBA audit kicking off. So rather than taking the SBA audit down the road, we're saying, let's just jump in. Let's go to audit, and we're not going to go and do individual examinations of these different business processes. Rather, we're just going to use the SBA audit as our examination. So, to me, it makes great practical sense. It's good. The best use of the Air Force's resources and the taxpayers' resources. It's the best way forward. All this is, again, the balance sheet work we're doing. But I want you to appreciate that we're acknowledging we're going in with some risk to this first audit of it. And we take risks, that's okay. Next slide. It continues and continues, and then we do things like valuation, disclosure, presentations. Those are the notes that usually go on financial statements. If you've ever looked at different financial statements, remarkably, they have a lot of comparable similarities to what we have to do as a federal entity. And we go to full audit in fiscal year 18. So that means all of our financial statements will be under audit. So next slide. What we've learned along the way, common deficiencies, I've talked to you about that. 577s, 2875s, are we signing them? Who's a supervisor here? Okay, I'm going to raise my hand first. I've done it. How many of you as supervisors have gotten that 2875 and somebody, an employee here says, boss, I need you to approve this, I need you to sign this, and you just go, sign, done. And didn't look at it, and then say, well, why do you need access to this system? What is it? Should you really have access to this system? So I've done it. I've done that too. So we need to make sure that we're monitoring and looking at the things that we're doing that need to be done in terms of people wanting access to the system. Should they have it? Is it the right access? Are they asking for more permission levels than they should have? That's our responsibility to do that sanity check. And that takes time. I know, and I know you're, from a time standpoint, you're all very stressed. You have to be, I know, because I've been pushing a lot of work your way. So I realize that. Closeout is going to come with or without audit, so you're going to have to get through 30 September. There's tons of work you have to do. And we just need to continue to be more careful about what we're doing. I think the Air Force probably some of our worst, in terms of these common deficiencies that we identify. We get the job done. We're so focused on let's get the job done. Sometimes we skip the dotting of the I's and crossing of the T's. So I think you might say those are calculated risks we take. Well, from a financial statement standpoint, we won't pass muster by doing that. So we have to be more careful about taking those kinds of steps or skipping over those steps. Next slide. Priorities going forward, I think we've talked about that. We have a bunch of corrective actions we need to implement. You guys are going to be on the receiving end of some of those corrective actions, and we're working with the functionals, whether it's A1 or AQC for contracting, or A4 for logistics or supply requisitions, to make sure that they are buying into the process and are working with us. And we need to get our audit infrastructure in place and ready to go. So next slide. So the other way we're going to get there is with DEAMS, which is our General Ledger Compliant Accounting System. I was just at Tyndall. DEAMS is going to be deployed to, are any of you on DEAMS yet? Really cool. Do you hate it or love it, or mixed?
Not very good.
Not very good, huh?
It's been a challenging as we're trying to understand the general ledger
Yeah.
language and getting used to all the different functionalities.
Yeah. And I understand the reports aren't quite where they need to be.
We're getting there. We're at Scott.
You're at Scott.
We were the test base, and so we've done a lot of growing.
You're the guinea pig. So yeah, I mean, he took a lot of the hard knocks at Scott, and we've refined. I mean, from where we were several years ago, we've made great progress. But from a report standpoint, there's a reporting tool, but it's not near as user-friendly as we'd like for it to be. And they're supposed to be fielding in October a new reporting tool. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
they're supposed to be coming out with a new one in, I think, August.
Right.
I think is what they were telling us.
Okay.
It's supposed to be much better than Discover.
Right.
And so we're really anticipating to look at that.
Right.
Because right now, your ODLs and your status of funds, they don't balance to really anything.
Right,
And you
right.
try to run a CRIS and they don't.
Yeah. And ultimately, when we get to where we're completely in DEAMS, you won't, you'll be running a fund status report that you're not merging with CRIS. And I mean, that's the problem, is we're dual processing, we're leaving some things in legacy, and so you're seeing data, TDY does not look like TDY, and you've got to map appropriately. The one thing with an audit compliant, general ledger compliant accounting system is probably your ODL has a lot more business events than what it used to have, because it's double entry accounting. Think of it as double entry accounting, so every event is twice as many postings. So there's some challenges to it, but Alphatech has reviewed DEAMS and said, a couple years ago they said DEAMS is terrible, it's not meeting the measures and metrics that you said it should meet. The Air Force FMP organization, Mike Sorrento, who's the bio or the CIO, FMCIO's, what CIO stands for?
Chief Information Officer.
Thank you. For FM has its own CIO, has been working this very aggressively, along with the Acquisition Program Office and the PEO that are in AFMC that are fielding the system. And Alphatech and DOT&E came in last year, assessed the system, and said, you guys have made tremendous progress, and you're on the path to a successful deployment. Yes, sir.
I'm at Space Command.
Uh-huh.
Is there any, are they thinking about putting a module that will track the reimbursement costs for teams? That's coming since we just started doing that back in October.
So, for those of you who are doing the RBA, BA in reimbursements, I think some of you probably have seen that at your MATCHCOMs. for deans, there's no TOA. You're either in an RBA environment or a direct environment. So there won't be a module. You're just executing budget authority, and it's just that you record how you received it appropriately. So in the meantime, you've got to go through this RBA, BA issue as we get through, so that's in legacy our solution to becoming audit compliant. And there's a lot of parallel activity going on. What are we doing different than what the Army did with GFIBS? Army said with GFIBS, which was the Army's ERP for accounting, they just shoved it out, and they made everybody learn together. The Air Force is being much more methodical about doing it, so that's good. But what happens is we have parallel activities going on because people are learning RBA and DEAMS, and people are having to do changes in the legacy process for how we're doing reimbursements. That's probably what you're feeling now. And I know because Space Command has space test ranges or space ranges that you have some complex RBA activity. I get that. I actually worked at Eglin Air Force Base, which has an MRTFB, and worked in JOCUS. So I'm familiar with the challenges that you're going to face. So if you think about it, apps goes away, IAPS goes away, gas goes away, you're all in teams. So, think about, we're not going to eliminate all our feeder systems. I think SPS and MOCAS are still going to be feeding teams. There will be others. DTS, but we get rid of a bunch of them, and so you're in a single environment. And what I'm told, I actually have looked at the system and watched a requisition being made, and it's kind of like being on Amazon. It is a menu driven. What I'm excited about is like I came in 1988. Our accounting system that I came in and started using is the same one you guys are using. It was fielded in 1968, so it was 20 years when I got there. So it's time for it to go away. Think about it. The F4 was probably first used in the late 60s, right? Maybe early 70s. When did we last fly F4s? Other than using them for targets, we do it with our weapon systems. We get rid of an old weapon system and say, you know what, it's time for a new fighter. It's time for a new accounting system. What I'm excited about is how many PACs in the room? PAL Squares. All right, well, there's a bunch of you. How many accounting graduates? Any PACs had an accounting degree? Yes? Yeah, cool. Excellent. So you probably were a little surprised when you saw GAFs and said, this is the accounting system? It's not really, I remember thinking, that's not quite what I visualized the Air Force using. In 1988, it was not what I visualized, this green screen with little green lights that you had to make sure you counted the right number of lines, and you put a G and an H and an X and it just didn't make any sense. I thought we should be further along than this. In 1988, I thought we should be further along than that. So now if you're coming in, if you're a brand new butter bar coming out of ROTC and just getting commissioned and you got your degree in accounting, or if you're a PALS acquired and you're coming in as to work accounting or finance or budget, now what they're going to see is something that probably they expected to see coming out of college with an accounting degree. So for us to use the old system, we got to kind of be open-minded about it and be willing to try new things. And and I will say this about DEAMS, and I've said this about I said this yesterday. There's always some really, really smart kid, some smart tech sergeant who's going to look at a way to take build an Excel or an Access spreadsheet or database that's going to take your GAFs download, your DEAMS download, and voila. Look at that beautiful report, and it does everything you need to do to manage your commander's checkbook. Because fundamentally, as an old budget guy, that's what I want you to be able to do, is manage your commander's checkbook. Is your commander able to do what he needs to do and prioritize and make sure that you can advise him into making the correct allocation decisions for the limited resources he has. And he has more and more limited resources. Next slide. Am I running out of time?
Still got 1 hour.
Still got an hour? You got it for 2 hours?
Not an hour and a half,
Okay. So I got 30 minutes.
if you want. It can be 30 minutes.
Oh, well, when did I start?
At 9:20.
Oh, okay, I got 2 hours. I got another hour. Come on. All right, Deans, so we talked about that. You can read that. I'm not going to read the charts to you. It is an auditable financial system. Like I said, it's an Oracle-based system. It's a system that private sector activities are using. Again, if you're that young lieutenant, young NCO, young Palace Acquire who says 4 years from now, you know what? I think I want to go work in industry. I enjoyed my time with the federal government, but I really, my heart's in something else, and I want to go work in industry. Now you can say, on your resume, you can say, I'm using Oracle-based accounting system. We couldn't say that, we could say, yeah, I use BQ. And they'd say, what's that? And it's gas. What's that? Now you can say, I use an Oracle-based accounting system. That's huge to me. I think that is so cool. Because I think, we shouldn't, not everybody's going to have the linear path that I had. That said, I'm starting to work for the Air Force in 1988, and I'm going to stay with the Air Force till they shoot me or make me leave. Some of you want to do something different. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's, we all pursue different things, and this accounting system, to me, a really neat byproduct of it is it gives you an opportunity to be more portable as to where you can take your skill set to. Next slide. Those are our deployments. I think this is an older chart. ACC actually picks up in October of 14. Oh, there it is. It is there. So, but basically, as many hands, next time someone comes in here from FMP and says, how many of you are using Deems? Pretty much more than half the class is going to say, I'm using Deems. The big activities that we're holding off on are, the really big activities are Space Command and AFMC. You have some challenging things. Space Command and AFMC have acquisition, have large FMS activities, have job order cost accounting system, have several things that aren't yet built in and refined into the module. The overseas activities are also later, PACAF, and I don't see you, there's your safety. For civilian hires and then foreign currency fluctuation, and then civilian foreign national process. There's some challenges there that we need to work through, so we'll make those corrections, and that's why those are further out. But ultimately, we're going to be full up on Deems, and the timing is great. October 16, FY17, that's 1 year before we're supposed to go to full financial statement audit. So it kind of sounds like a great plan. I'd like to take credit for it, but it was in place before I got there. So anyhow, next chart. Those are the bases we're going to in 15. There might be a base near you there. Anybody? Yes, sir.
The systems that currently interface with Deems, I'm from the Joint Base McGuire we just went about 6 weeks ago.
Right.
But we're noticing we're relying on the interface for like ESS, DTS, access online to bank.
Yeah.
Do we forecast ahead upgrading those systems so the LOAs for Deems or the SFS line will be the same in those systems that are currently interfacing? Or is that this way when we bring up new RAs in our career field, we're not trying to teach them an E61950 is 2303112?
Right. What supposedly is being done is a lot of the legacy systems, they're building in a translator, a translator so the system will convert the language and make it SFS compliant. Now, in terms of on the original input in of those feeder systems, that's a good question. I don't know. In some cases they might be, but ultimately the plan is to move into a completely SFS environment. So the challenges for some of the legacy systems, is it worth doing the modification for a system that's going to be sunset? Mm-hmm. So I think along the way there's probably going to be a little bit of both, and
Just one catching up with the other.
Yeah. So, and I think about how you asked the question, and I know the translator issue, but I'll have to talk to Mike Sorrento, who's a lot smarter than me on this, and certainly the lead for it in terms of will we ever be, when the translator's in place for all of our different feeder systems, will we have to continue input in the old environment, in the old line of accounting system, or can we go to where everybody's just thinking in S. That's how we're going to get there. I didn't learn BQ gaps and have to think another accounting. I just thought in terms of BQ gaps. I just thought in terms of the standard EECs. And as long as we're doing this data mapping from one to another, it's a challenge and it's frustrating to us. So again, my challenge is to you smart people in the room, and you're all smart people, but there's always that really innovative, creative guy who's going to, or gal, who's going to come up with a way for you to feed your, especially for your reports, to develop reports that are easy and you're able to use, and you're not doing a lot of manual work to be able to see your fund status. Bottom line is you got to provide decision support to your commanders. And we need to make it to where, if you guys have a creative solution, share it. I think that's probably the one thing from Scott that was unfair to you is you didn't have the benefit of somebody else having that aha moment. All the aha moments had to be at Scott, and you were on your own for a
Well,
while.
we didn't run dual systems either.
Initially, you didn't, that's right.
So they just shut BQ off and said, use Deems.
Yeah, and that was, we learned our lesson. That was not the best way to do it. So now what we're doing is so say on 30 June, some organization goes into Deems. Everything they've done up to that part of the fiscal year in legacy stays in legacy. Any new financial transaction, new obligation starts in Deems. And you'll just close out those legacy events whenever they ultimately do close out. Now the foot stomp there is manage your ODL, do your TAR, get that stuff out of there and close out and expense out as quickly as you can. Because the sooner you do, the sooner you ultimately will be out of a dual processing environment.
What we find right now is, Scott, I'm at the headquarters, what we find right now is that the bases that are doing that, where they're managing legacy and they're managing Deems, it's in the funding document arena. So when we distribute funds out to a base that's running a dual system, what we have to do is when we run that through the FM suite or the AFM, which is where the funding documents come from, we have to tell that system what document that is. Because everybody's familiar with the ADSN or the number of what DFAS it comes from. Well, Deems has its own, and so Legacy does as well. So when they put that in AFM, they've got to know which ADSN to put that against, so that when it gets to the base, they know how to load the target there. They load it either BQ or they load it in Deems. So that's a little bit of a challenge right now for AMC. Right. Because we have to figure that out, and we'll have to do that for a little while. Yeah. Because of, maybe contracts or things that are going to be running over. So. Right. Yeah,
and while you're in, some of your old legacy activity, if you can move it over to Deems, if there's a contract that you can cleanly cut out, work with PK or your con squadron and move it over to Deems, do it, but make sure it's worth the effort. If it's going to create more headache, then just leave it in legacy and close it out in legacy. So, next slide. It's just a deployment summary. I think I talked to you about that. We're going to a lot of bases. ACC, AETC, Guard and Reserve units are also on the receiving end. The number of users is growing exponentially. We just had the DoD Air Force terminated a couple years ago ECSS, which was the logistics ERP, and we had spent $1 billion on that system. 2-3 years later, we're still getting punches in the face for that, and Congress will say, you really sucked at ECSS. How do I know that Deems isn't going to be the same thing? So last Tuesday night, I was up till 9 o'clock working at the office because I have 3 hours of meetings. Mr. Bennett's gone, Mr. Terrell's gone, and I say, oh look, I have an email that says Secretary James is going to a meeting with Senator McCain. She needs some talking points on why Deems is not the same as ECSS and what we're doing differently. So, you know, that's a... Fortunately, I didn't have any plans Tuesday by the time I got home, but I sent the note to Ms. Thomas saying, ma'am, Acting Air Force Comptroller, here's proposed words. I worked with Mr. Herrera, who's our CIO, and he had some input from the Acquisition Program Office, and we had the right story to tell, and Mr. Bennett told me, by the way, you were in Air Force Times, because, not me, but the words that we put in were quoted verbatim. So that's always cool. If you're ever thinking, do I ever want to work at the Pentagon, especially for your civilians, for you military, especially your officers, you're going to find your way there eventually. Like it or not, they will find you. Your butt's going to be in the Pentagon. But your civilians, it's more of a choice and an option. And I will tell you, it's a neat. I'm glad. I think I would have regretted never having made that tour up to the Pentagon. For those of you who are more inclined to stay at one location, I have no issue with that. That's civilian continuity, and civilian continuity is a great thing. But it's a neat opportunity. So something to consider if you're as you're going along the way. I mean, just keep your options open, because you never know. I would have never guessed that I would go up there, and I have no regrets for doing so. Next slide. Investment in people. So we've talked about all this. We're doing audit readiness monthly testing. We're trying to teach you what we're asking you to test. If I'm not doing, or if my world is not doing a good job helping you understand why we're doing that testing, hopefully that audit conversation kind of resonates now with you, and you better understand why am I having to do all these test scripts, and what's the purpose of it. You know, we comptrollers, we're motivated by stoplight metrics. I mean, nothing will get us to do things better than having a red, yellow, green metric in front of us, and we want to get that green metric. So we'll have to work on that. But hopefully you understand and appreciate why we're pushing so much of that out on you. Beams is our system that we're implementing. A huge number of you are going to be impacted by that this coming fiscal year. Next chart. And then DoD certification, we're making sure you're trained. If you're really, really young in your career, probably DoD certification will be easy. If you're far along in your career and you spent time in acquisition like I did and had to take all these DAU classes, DoD certification is going to be pretty easy, because I think I mapped almost all my classes and I was able to get my level 3. I have to do 2 online classes yet. So shame on me for not doing them yet. I'm going to do them. I will do them, I promise. My boss was like, do that. I was like, okay. I mean, I have a CDFM already, CDFMA, so I have time, but I need to finish. I need to set the example for all you guys, and all of you set the example for others around you. It's not that hard. I think it's sort of, some of you that are in the mid-range in your careers, I think it's going to probably be, in my limited understanding of this is, it probably might be a little more cumbersome for you to fill out and meet those requirements, especially if you did not grow up in an acquisition environment and didn't have as many opportunities to go do DAU type training. But there's plenty of online resources to meet the requirement. You have 2 years to do that from the time your position is coded. Don't wait the last 3 months of that 2 years to get it all done. Do it methodically along the way, and take advantage of what you have to do. I mean, go find a course that relates best to maybe something that you're challenged with. Make it a meaningful exercise. So that's my advice to you. Next chart. Budget update. So next chart. So I stole these slides from something Dr. Moore had done. This is really cool, because when you think about how there was a lot of FinOps type charts, fire type charts, I mean, for those of you who've been around a long time, how have we ever seen an FM update briefing that had that much accounting stuff and 3 or 4 budget slides? Never. I tell John Martin, you guys aren't important. It's the FinOps guys. We're the real important guys. Accounting and finance is where it's at. So, and he's like, yeah, shut up, Herrera. You don't know anything. So, just some graphics. National fiscal environment. Federal debt's going up. Revenues are not, or rather outlays are outpacing revenues. You all know what that means. We have deficits. Got a short period of budget surpluses, but 9/11 sort of undid all that momentum we had going forward with surpluses. And federal outlays, you can see, defense is a huge portion of that, but entitlements just continues to grow. So lots of competing resources. We don't get to say how much of that we're going to receive. Congress does. And all we can do is make a very compelling argument for what we need and how much more we need. Next slide. So some historical budget trends you'll see post-Vietnam, post-Cold War buildup. Air Force was on the edge of taking basically a disproportionate share of those reductions. For this last buildup, it looks like, and I think this has the Budget Control Act sequestration numbers laid into it, Air Force has a 17% cut compared to DoD. So for a change, Air Force is having a smaller piece of the budget reductions. That doesn't mean we don't still have significant budget challenges. Next slide. So the guiding principles of our PB request: full spectrum military operations, full spectrum training. What does that mean? Think of that in terms of, for how many of you were around in the early 90s doing budget stuff? You remember all the JCS exercises, the flag exercises that used to occur? So you know that we would go and play with our international partners, and we'd go to ranges that would give us EW ranges, electronic warfare ranges, that would test us in environments that we thought were the likely scenarios we might meet if we were going to Korea or if we were going to fight some Cold War adversary. Our training has all been in Ukraine, not all, we still do flag exercises, but a large amount of our operational training has taken a backseat to, no kidding, Iraq, Afghanistan, OEF, OIF. And so what happens is those are not the typical threats that we would otherwise see. I mean, if Korea were to say, we're going to be a pain, we're going to do something and you're going to engage. Well, we haven't been training and practicing for that EW environment. So that's when you hear that, what does full spectrum training mean? That's what they're talking about, is we need to go back, and we made in the last POM and PB cycle investments in our test and training ranges so that we could kind of go back to that process. And so that's what that means. We continue to work the total force so that Guard, Reserve, Active are seen more as one, that we're leveraging each other's skills and capabilities, that we're making the right decision for the Air Force, and we're doing it in a way that considers each of those activities. In fact, I think probably the Air Force, from the 13 PB time frame, when we had some reductions that were surprises to a lot of people, and we took it on the teeth. I mean, Congress just beat the crap out of us on that PB rollout and said, you didn't tell us you were going to do this. You didn't ask us our permission. You gave us no notification. Guard Reserve, we're not quite as on board with the plan as we would have liked for them to be. Now we're being much more collaborative, and I think, if anything, we're a role model for the other services, and Congress is now pointing at the other services saying, why can't you be more like Air Force and have this collaborative environment? And I think there's a lot of goodness there, because all the military guys, you deploy, once you deploy environment, it doesn't matter whether you're active Guard Reserve, you're a deployed airman, and you're doing airman, Air Force work. So we need to have a good relationship with each other, and we need to leverage and use each other's skill sets and resource in such a way that we're optimizing across all three activities. So We're trying to cut overhead. I think some of you have heard Advanced Management Headquarters, Air Force took some more cuts recently. Some of it's on the newspaper. You know, that cutting overhead allows us to put more tooth and reduce tail. When you hear the tooth to tail, you know, we have a lot of bases. We probably have more bases, more infrastructure than we need in terms of airplanes that we're trying to support and operational missions we're trying to support. But we can't just willy-nilly say we're going to close bases. That's a difficult, challenging process. So we have to sustain infrastructure. So you kind of have to, we have to sort of say, okay, well, what's the fence line then for the Air Force? What do we consider to be the main key components or categories of things we're going to continue to fund? It's extremely challenging because it costs more and more to pay people. It costs more and more to upkeep buildings. And so we're trying to make the right decisions. We're getting rid of air fleets that we feel like we can divest of, like the A-10 and the U-2. And in that case, in the case of the A-10, it's a CAS airplane. That's all it is a CAS airplane. Is it a good CAS airplane? It's a great CAS airplane. But we've made so many modernizations in our munitions that a B-52 can be a CAS airplane now. So if we, you know, a F-15 and F-16 that weren't not necessarily designed to be CAS airplanes are going to be CAS airplanes. So why would we retain a single mission airplane when we have multi-mission airplane that we could move those resources towards? So it's still a hard pill to swallow. I mean, you know, it's A-10's it's you know, I think it's been a proven resource by the Air Force, and it certainly has served its purpose. But that's the logic for why we make those decisions. Bottom line, keep no more force structure than we can afford to keep ready, and requires tough choices to absorb billion-dollar reductions. So General Welsh's bumper stickers down there, you should all read that. General Welsh is a great messenger. He's a really, really neat guy to brief. I'll tell you guys a side story just because I can. So, I mean, you know, because all this stuff, it gets boring. I see your eyelids when I'm talking fire, and your eyelids go down. I tease people. I say, I'm bringing sexy back to accounting. Yeah, I say that. There's only so much you can do with automating just to keep you interested. But hopefully I did make it to where it resonated with you and you understood what we mean by auditable financial statements. But General Welsh, late on, when I'm in the engine room, there's going to be a tank meeting the next day. They're talking about a bunch of budget cuts on some training stuff, and the guys in the engine room, the FM guys, have to build a bunch of briefing charts to help the A3 prepare for the tank meeting. So we build briefing charts, working with the A3 guys to identify the cuts, where they're going to be, and what the impacts are. And they say, okay, we really want you guys to go brief the A3 tomorrow, to go with us when we brief the A3 to get them ready. Okay. So this was during sequestration time frame. And so we also added a couple of charts in there that showed why the Air Force had to cut civ pay, flying hours, training, because we showed how it was model driven, you know, that this is our budget and so much is in those areas. And when you go through January saying sequestration is not going to happen, we believe there's going to be relief and we're going full speed ahead executing as if, then when they say, whoops, sequestration did happen and we do have to make an adjustment, the only place you can go is into those other areas. So we put that chart in slide deck that we really graphically illustrated the impact. And I got to tell you, I heard in meetings the Secretary, the Chief, Secretary Donnelly, the Chiefs, Senator, no one for these civilians. They absolutely detested furlough. They did not want it to happen. It was a very, very difficult choice. And don't ever think for a second that there wasn't a lot of concern, gnashing of teeth, and just really frustration that we had to go there. So it's something that I would message to you. But anyway, it's a fun story. So I go with my guy. We go and we talk to General Field, who's the A3, and he says, we walk him through all the charts. Most of them are ops charts, and we hardly have any budget say. But we talked to him through 2 or 3 of our charts, and we show him the little diagram charts that showed why we made some of the decisions we made. And So we're like, okay, we're done, and me and my lieutenant colonel get ready to leave, and General Field says, you're coming with me. So we get to go into the chief of staff's office, and my lieutenant colonel's like, I'm going to the chief's office, you know? And General Welsh is there, he's like, hey guys, have a seat, let's talk, let's go through the chart, da-da-da-da-da. I bring up the chart that I said kind of best displays, tells the story. Remember, messaging, ability to write, ability to do PowerPoint. I bring up that chart, he looked at me and said, that's a great chart. I love that chart. You know, and so a lady, a captain who worked for me at the time, she did that chart. So and it's really, really cool to hear the chief of staff of the Air Force sell that. But he was such a pleasant guy. He wanted to understand, okay, how do I defend you? How do I defend the Air Force in this tank meeting? Which I don't know what tank stands for, but it's basically all the service chiefs getting together. And you know, my lieutenant colonel, he engaged him, asked him several questions, and he had the answers. So be ready when the opportunity presents itself. Be ready to take part. You know, just a little side story. You know, went outside at lunchtime, texted my mom, hey mom, guess what I did today, you know, so I thought it was a pretty cool deal that I got to brief the chief on something. So anyway, next chart. Cost challenges. Any costers in the room? Where are you costers?
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles?
And then Arnold.
Arnold, cool.
Robin. Yeah.
Say that again?
Yeah.
Oh, Scott, gotcha.
Right path.
Right path. Okay, excellent. So most of you costers are acquisition costers. Some of you are O&M type costers. So sounds like, could be wrong, but anyway, cost challenges. I would say when I went to Eglin Air Force Base and became the Deputy Air Armament Center FM, we had a cost shop of 3 or 4 people. It was tiny. And by the time I left there, we had a huge cost force, and we were hiring 14s and 13s and 12s, and the Air Force finally got it. We're not doing a good job working our schedules, working our estimates, making sure they're realistic, making sure they're defendable, making sure that we're providing to the budget side something that can be, and the programming side, something that can be appropriately programmed and budgeted to, so that we're making the right trades. And I think we've made huge ground on that. So you costers, you have a neat environment that you're going to. I mean, 2004, so 10 years ago, your growth potential was that. Now it's huge. It's huge. I mean, so again, that algebra, that stats. Oh, by the way, if you want to be coster, you have to take calculus now too. So take Calc 101. I passed Calc 101, so you guys can do that. Next chart. Okay, our cost estimating community has been doing a lot of work supporting budget and supporting decision makers, analyzing O&S type costs, and you know, they're helping to tell the story. Bottom line, you know, answering for military, we're going down from almost 360,000 to around 320,000. The cost of those military members per airman is going up from, say, 60,000 to 90,000+. That's a challenge. Total Air Force funding, while it has gone up, PERS has stayed pretty steady as a percent of the Air Force TOA. The problem is the number of airmen that we're paying for is a lot less. So it's expensive. It's extremely expensive. It's not your fault, by the way, military members. All personnel costs are expensive. But these are the kind of challenges that DOD, you know, Congress and the general public, a lot of the public will look, or other federal agencies will say, well, look at how your budget's growing. But a lot of our cost growth it's not like we're being able to buy more with it. It's while inflation may be very, very low, there are areas of our business that have a high inflation. You know, personnel is an example of that. Next chart. They've been looking at and tracking O&S costs, and bottom line is some of the things that they discovered was contractor repair inside is limited for data. That I find that extremely interesting. In the early 90s, when I was doing CLS contracts, I would look at, and we'd get the contract and the dollar amount. That's a ton of money. And I really didn't have much insight into what are we paying, and apparently that challenge still exists. Interesting, sustainment costs and for contractor logistics support and for organic are going up at similar rates. So our depots, our organic depots have costs that are growing just as high as our contractor facilities. I think it's probably in some case related to piece parts and the cost of continuing to sustain and buy the piece parts that we have to buy. But bottom line is we have fewer airplanes, fewer flying hours, yet our O&S costs continue to go up. So by doing some analysis, hopefully the cost community is going to help us narrow down maybe where we can do some trade-offs and save some money. Do you have a question? Nope. Okay. I thought I saw a hand raised. Next chart. Investment assessments and trends. You can see where we have risk in terms of where we have cost risk in the amount of acquisition programs we've done estimates for. That has gone down from 11.9 billion in PV11 to $1 billion in risk. In terms of, we just didn't have as confident an estimate as we would like to have in that. So again, why? Because we have a much more robust cost force, because our cost community has a seat at the table now. Next chart. And so for you costers, I'm doing you a disservice. I don't have as much to tell you about because I'm not a coster. But I will tell you this. Sitting in the Air Force board and group rooms, group discussions for palm drills and budget drills, our chief of costs, Kathy Watering, and her deputy, Grant Vicker, they have a seat at the table. And they can single-handedly say, no, we can't fund that. That estimate or that budget profile you're showing is unrealistic for the estimate that we know is out there. And that's incredible power that the cost estimating community has now. And people listen to them. They have the commander's ear, they have AQ's ear, they have the board chair or co-chair's ear on whether or not we should move forward with an estimate that, or with a program that, in terms of is the schedule realistic? Is the estimate realistic? Do we have the right resources allocated to that requirement? So they are heavily involved in the POM process, so they did nearly 50 cost assessments with an increased O&S focus. They're engaged and involved in the POM. They're helping us reduce risk, and I think it's working. Next slide. So final thoughts. You guys thought you'd never get rid of me. The Air Force remains steadfastly committed to a clean audit opinion. We're working our tails off on that. I know very much that you all are going to feel the brunt this fall and then next calendar year with the audit. And it's going to be a distraction in terms of you still have your JOB to do. You're going to be under audit, but you still have to do your funds distribution, FMB and FWG. You still have your day-to-day activity you have to do, and you're going to have to balance it all. You still got to get through closeout, and then we're going to also tell you, by the way, we've been doing this wrong, and here's an improved process for doing it. And I would just encourage you all to be good wingmen to your coworkers and help each other out and keep an eye on each other, because quite frankly, and I've done this before, sometimes you just need to get up and take a walk. I mean, the best thing to do is just step away and keep an eye on your coworkers and make sure that they're not overstressing. If you can help each other out, because there's going to be a surge in activity, and we're all going to feel it. Talked about our challenging accounting system. Talked about our, the one thing we're trying to do, and that's why we're providing updated guidance and refining policy, is we don't want our audit readiness efforts to be just a one-time, get one clean opinion and then revert back to however we did things. Rather, we want lasting improvements to take hold. And then we have a tough fiscal climate that we're continuing to work through. And we have to work with Congress, we have to work with all stakeholders to make sure what we're presenting is something that they can live with. I mean, quite frankly, it's the public's resources, and that's what. So when I say we have to work with Congress, you know what? They are the appropriators. So we do have to work with them, and they are representing the public, and we have to respect that. But we, the Air Force, have to make tough decisions, and we have to ensure we get buy-in early with the right stakeholders so that we're successful. And we keep our focus on our operational responsibilities. Because that's, why are we budgeteers here? To me, we're enablers. We're war-fighting enablers. We help get bombs on target. We help get deployments made. We help redeploy troops. We help get the mission done. And take great pride in that and do a good job. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Sir, Senior Master Sergeant Lewis, NGB.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's realistic for a Senior Master Sergeant 4 years after retirement to aspire to be an SDS? And if so, what things should be happening now to work toward that direction?
I would tell you that it is indeed realistic. I would say to you that there are NCOs, retired NCOs, who are very high up our food chain at the GS-15 level. I don't know of any of them that are SCSs, retired NCOs. I wouldn't dare say that it couldn't be done. Lori Tanner, I don't know if you know who Lori Tanner is, but Lori Tanner had Chief Ryder's job at one time. The Senior Enlisted Advisor for Finance, for Financial Management. And she's a GS-15 at Wright Pat. She was in the AFMC. I think she still is in AFMC FMA. She's a deputy FMA. Deputy FMA is a critical job in Wright Pat in the Air Force. The AFMC deputy FMA is a critical job. Lori's doing everything she can to make herself competitive for the next SES job. So absolutely, it is realistic. You're going to have to move around some and take some tough jobs. You're competing against a peer group that has a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, has done some level of IE or SD, senior development education. So you might have some catching up to do. But how long do you want to be in the game? If you're going to be around for 20 years, it's a piece of cake. So you can get there. So absolutely, I think it's realistic. But you're coming in at you're senior master sergeant, so you're coming in a few years after I started as in 1988 as a fresh out of college civilian. But at the same time, you've already taken FMSOC. So there's some squares that you will have filled that I didn't fill. So I think absolutely it's realistic. It is competitive, but. Enjoy the ride. Get in there, go after it, and aspire to it, and enjoy every job along the way. I will tell you guys, especially you guys who are in BFMOC, my target grade as a PAC was GS-11. My dad was a WS-9 and wage supervisor 9 at Fort Sam Houston. My mom was a GS-11. When I made GS-12, I thought, man, I have arrived. I am where I need to be. So, and I approached every job after that with that same mindset. I've never lived beyond my means. I never, I didn't spend 13 money when I was a GS-12. I didn't spend 14 money when I was a GS-13. And so when I applied for a job, I didn't worry. I wasn't like, especially a promotion. It wasn't a matter of, God, I gotta get this promotion. If I don't, I'm never gonna make ends meet. I was always in a good place financially, and I enjoyed the job I was doing. So I just considered it an opportunity. I was always very relaxed when I went in for an interview because my glass is half full. I approach life as my glass is half full, and I think that probably served me very well when I was sitting there in the interview. So keep that in mind. Have high aspirations, but you know what? Your success is to your definition. So I could have gotten a job in San Antonio when I graduated from UTSA as a at Randolph Air Force Base and met a girl who said, "You're not taking me out of San Antonio over my dead body." And I probably could have found a way to be extremely happy as a GS-12 at Randolph Air Force Base for the rest of my life. So, it is, you define your success and then go after it. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What process do these systems go through before you guys implement them? That, like Dean's and Chris, what is done before we're like, oh yeah, let's buy this awesome system and then?
I don't know. Why are you asking me hard questions? It's rigorous. If you've grown up in the acquisition community or if you're familiar with it, you know that there's an analysis of alternatives that is done before you do a major acquisition, and that AOA will sort of point you in a direction. And you do some early technology demonstrations to look at what are competing. A lot of it is comparing to what are the other services, activities you're using. I think Army and Navy are in SAP. Some of the defense agencies are using Oracle. So, I'm not sure what the rationale was back then for us to go with Teams, but it is a methodical process that we go through. Mr. Sorrento, if he were teaching this class or doing this briefing, could give you a much more detailed answer. Just shoot me an email, I'll give you a better answer. I'll get you a better answer. Yes, sir.
As you're more well aware than any of us, the last 2 fiscal year rollouts for initial distribution have been struggles, from CRAs going all the way to April to what we dealt with last year. How are you seeing, or are you seeing anything different? I know Congress is not predictable, but lessons learned maybe into the rollout of 15. Are you seeing the same type of struggle?
I think from a total force standpoint, well, I will tell you, the 13 budget rollout, we took it on the chin. We got a good beat down in Congress on that one, but ultimately, a very large percentage of the things we wanted to do ended up being implemented. So that's success. There are a few things. It was a very painful success, but it was success. I think from a congressional standpoint, we've done a really good job getting our total force story and process in order, total force guard reserve active, so that we're playing well together. And we've seen success there. I think, again, I mentioned we sort of were pointed out as a good example of how to do it now versus we're not doing that as well as we should be. So, but that's the thing is all it takes is one upset senator, because the one item we decide to cut is in Senator so-and-so's district. So, but that what we need to drive our decisions based on what's best for the Air Force. We need to be aware of what's going to happen and who's going to be mad at us for the right decisions we make or right recommendations we make. But I think we've done some improving in terms of our relationship with Congress. So the Air Force has an FMBL, Sam Grable, Colonel Sam Grable. He's the FMBL chief. So he's the budget liaison for the HAC and SAC, House Appropriations Committee and Senate Appropriations Committee. He's got an outstanding relationship with the staffers that he works with, and he's done a super job for us. So. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
More, sir. You mentioned the captain and lieutenant colonel that work on your staff earlier, and I was just curious.
When I was in the engine room, yeah.
How would you describe the experience for military at SAF FM, and then what are some of your expectations for those that CGOs and FGOs that work?
All right. So if I were a CGO, I would do my darn. You're going to get, like I said, if you stay on the right path, your butt's going to be in the Pentagon someday. So I don't mean that in a mean way, but just the reality is you're going to be there. So especially if you aspire to, if you want to be a MAGCOM FMA or a MAGCOM Comptroller there someday, if that's what you see as your success, then that path, that road will lead you through the building. I would say in the engine room, some of the guys I worked with, it was their first time. They were 05s and it was their first time in the building. And they're at a disadvantage to the 05 who was there as a senior captain, young major. Because the 05s that go in there are scrambling to catch up in terms of what does this mean? What is a vibes? What is, I mean, the PBR drills, there's a lot of things that happen in the building that really we try not to bother the field with. So, I will tell you, we've had several 05s who've made it to 06, and their first time in the building was as a mid to senior level 05. I will say though, in terms of your ability to flourish as an 05, my recommendation to you, if my son was doing it or daughter was doing it, I would say get there as a senior captain, young major, and then go back later as a senior 05. So, and then if you make those 6, you'll probably go. So, any other questions? That's it. Well, guys, you have great opportunities here. Have fun. When I did this school at Shepherd Air Force Base, which was 6 hours from Dallas, I think, or 3 hours from Dallas. How far is it from Dallas? So there was a drive to Dallas, and there wasn't a whole lot to do at Shepherd Air Force Base. There's some neat things to do around here. Don't spend all your per diem at the casinos. And
Too late for some.
Oh no. But make